Chapter 16 of It Happened in Egypt. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. It Happened in Egypt by Charles Norris Williamson and Alice Muriel Williamson. Chapter 16. An Oiled Hand. That is where my diary of the desert stopped, for the adventure that ended our trip was not of the sort that mixes well with tragedies of lambs. Before dinner Monty had apologized for refusing my handkerchief, I really believe because she was sorry she had misunderstood, not because the rain had leaked through her tent, and she wanted me to give her mine. In fact, she and Biddy refused point blank at first when Anthony and I suggested the change. They would not have told us that the water had come in on their beds if they had thought we should suggest such a thing. All they wished for was to have the tent roof somehow mended before matters got worse. But we insisted, especially Fenton, and he is difficult to disobey. A look from him, and a drawing together of the black eyebrows, has the same effect on the mind of a rebellious woman as an "off with her head" from an Arabian Nights sultan, while I might vainly exert my ingenuity to achieve the results he gets by sheer mysterious magnetism. It was bedtime when the leak showed itself, but the change of quarters was accomplished with military quickness and precision, as Fenton's undertakings generally are, and almost before they knew what had happened, Monty and Brigit, who had been tent mates during the tour, found themselves transferred bag and baggage to our tent, with the last clean sheets in the bedroom Arab's possession. Transferred, we set ourselves to making repairs, and soon patched up the leaks. Rain at this season comes so rarely it was not surprising that a stitch or two had been neglected. Only the pillows and upper blankets had had time to get wet, and we had but to remove the coverings and turn the pillows. We both did this simultaneously, and simultaneously exclaimed, "Hello!" "They've left their treasures," said Anthony, not with quite the masculine scorn of feminine weaknesses I was used to noticing in him. Indeed, he spoke almost tenderly, as a father might speak at finding the forgotten doll of an absent child. Each of us stood with a wet pillow in his hand, gazing at his borrowed bunk. In the one I had selected lay a small chamois skin bag, attached to a narrow pink ribbon. In the bed chosen by Fenton was a tiny white enamelled watch on a platinum chain. Both these things had been covered by their respective owners' pillows, and forgotten in the hasty change of quarters. The watch was Monny's. She wore it round her neck every day. Therefore, the chamois skin bag on the other bed must be Brigit's. I told myself that in it she probably kept her pathetic store of money, hidden under her bodice by day, her pillow by night, and beholding this intimate souvenir of my childhood's friend, my heart yearned over her. "Too late to rouse them up now," said Anthony. "Yes," said I. "We must have been 20 minutes or half an hour getting the roof to rights. They may be asleep, and if not, they won't worry anyhow. They'll know that their things are safe till tomorrow morning." Fenton agreed with this verdict, and each keeping charge of his own treasure trove, we went to bed and to sleep. I am a champion dreamer, so much so that I often find the life of dreamland rivaling in interest the life of this side of sleep. I look forward to my dreams, as some people look forward to an interesting dinner party. But that night I was too tired to inspect the dream menu before lying down to it. The first thing I knew, a handsome Egyptian god with crystal eyes, like those which Bill Bailey means to make the fashion, stood by my bedside. I asked him politely whether he were Ra or Osiris, deliberately picking the two best gods of the bunch in order to flatter him, but without answering he pointed a bronze hand to the mat on which he stood. It was a white mat, and on it I read a word which evidently he meant to take as his name, Tam-Hatab. For an instant it seemed to me a fine name for an Egyptian god, though I hadn't met it before. Then I burst out laughing disrespectfully. "Why, you're only a bath mat, wrong side out," I heard myself sneering, and the god disappeared as a flash of lightning comes and is gone. In going, however, he stumbled slightly against the bed. It was a mere touch, but that, or my own voice, half waked me up. "Tam-Hatab," I mumbled dreamily, and was just reminding myself, before dropping off to sleep again, that I must tell Biddy about the new bath god, when I realized that he had not quite gone. No, not quite gone. It must be he who still lingered by the bed, for it could be nobody else. Anthony would not come and hover silently at my bedside in the middle of the night. Besides, I was almost awake now, and could hear the gentle, regular breathing of a man asleep. Anthony's breathing. "Go away, Tom Taub," I tried to say, but I was not awake enough to speak. He was bending over the bed. His face was near to mine. I felt rather than saw it. How could I see in the dark? Sleepily, even fretfully, I asked myself. And yet, was the tent dark? It had been, I remembered that. I remembered that Anthony had got to bed first, and I had extinguished the 2 candles on the washstand. Afterward, I had to grope my way to the bed. Now, however, there was a light, a very faint, rather curious light. There seemed to be only a square of it, a square sloped off at the top. It was opposite my eyes, which really were open now, I felt sure. I couldn't be dreaming this. It was like a queer-shaped window in the blackness, a window full of starlight, but close to the floor. Then the rain must have stopped. The stars must be out. Yes, but how could I see that? There was no window in the tent. This thought dogged the last film of sleep off my tired brain, like a veil snatched away by impatient fingers on an unseen hand. Odd! Those very words said over themselves in my head. Fingers on an unseen hand! And that was because a hand was being slipped cautiously, inch by inch, under my pillow. It was the Egyptian god's hand. But I knew suddenly that the dream god had turned into a thief, that the silver glimmering square of light was one of the tent flaps unbuttoned and turned back. That the man must stealthily have pulled up a peg or two while we slept our heavy sleep, must have crept into the tent, soft-footed over the thick rugs, and now here he was, trying to steal. After that I did not go on with the thought. My dull reasoning snapped off as short as a dry stick. I made a grab for the hand under my pillow, seized a wrist, held it for an instant in a grip which must have hurt, then had the shame and disappointment of feeling it slip out of my grasp, like a greased snake. There was a stifled exclamation of pain or surprise, scarcely louder than a sigh, and I was out of bed and after a shadow that ran for the low square of starlight. Something caught and tripped me as I reached the opening. What it was, I did not know then and I don't know now, but I had a vague impression that it was warm. If I had stumbled against a bare leg thrust out to stop me, it would have felt like that. Yet it could not have been the leg of the man running away. He was using both his, and must have used them well, for I was up and out from under the lifted tent flap which had fallen on top of me as I tumbled, before I could have counted 5. Very wide awake now, I stood in the rough, sandy grass, under a sky encrusted with stars, and could see no one. Barefooted, I pattered this way and that, searching every shadow, but the whole camp seemed an abode of peace. There was not a sound or movement even in the black ring of sleeping camels. Rain had driven to shelter the roving dogs, which had troubled us last night. The camp lanterns burned clear and strong, yellow and crude in the silver flood of starlight which dulled their radiance. The smell of earth and grass after the heavy shower was like the fragrance of tea roses. Could it be that an evil, stealthy presence had but just broken this sweet serenity with its vile intention, or had the whole incident been, after all, a singularly vivid dream? I should have believed so, if my hand, which had clutched that other hand, had not been slippery with oil. No, I had not dreamed, and suddenly a troubling thought leaped into my mind. Biddy! The name sprang onto my lips and spoke itself aloud. If this were for her! I had laughed at her forebodings. Sensational revenges, such as she feared, seemed so incongruous, so utterly unsuited to those laughing, long-lashed eyes of hers. Yet she had in her past life lived side by side with fear and tragedy for more years than I like to count. And as she said, men such as those whom Richard O'Brien had betrayed had been known to reach out very far to take revenge. Biddy had done nothing. Surely they owed her no grudge. But she had known things. Perhaps they thought that she knew even more than she did know. Their organization was rich as well as powerful. It had taken many branches. Yet why should men use its power to hurt the widow of a dead enemy, now that they, or fate, had put him underground? In a flash I remembered the chamois skin bag, which she had forgotten under the pillow, and lifting the loosened canvas flap with its dangling pegs, I stooped to go back into the tent. Inside I expected to find darkness, but instead I found light, Anthony up, setting a match to a candle wick, and looking a tall, dark silhouette in his pyjamas. "What's the row?" he calmly wanted to know, too calmly to suit my ruffled mood. "A thief, that's all," I answered, hastily searching under the pillow where the unseen hand had been.